Welcome to Leaping Larry's Revolutionary Reading Theatre.
Okay, and as I'm sure many of you know, we are reading the last chapter today, Blackshirts and Reds by Michael Parenti. Chapter 9, Anything But Class. Avoiding the C word. I feel like this is going to be very relevant to y'all. And I think what you're going to notice is that this is what we're talking about when we say like NPR radio shit or Amy Goodman or Democracy Now or Bernie Sanders or Jagmeet Singh, all of these types. They all fall into this category of what maybe they vehemently in their heart of hearts want to be for working people and for labor, but they miss that class power analysis. Some of them purposefully, some of them not purposefully. Regardless, it serves the same function. TYD, yeah, they did. Yeah, I knew they weren't way back. No, Riddispy, we read the end of Marxism chapter last time. So this one is anything but class. It goes sort of more into something we touched on in the last chapter. Only in more detail. So chapter 9. Anything but class. Avoiding the C word. Class is a concept that is strenuously avoided by both mainstream writers and many of our friends on the left. When certain words are eliminated from public discourse, so are certain thoughts. Dissident ideas become all the more difficult to express when there are no words to express them. Class is usually dismissed as an outworn Marxist notion with no relevance or contemporary society. It is a 5-letter word that is treated like a dirty 4-letter one. With the C word out of the way, it is then easy to dispose of other politically unacceptable concepts, such as class privilege, class power, class exploitation, class interest, and class struggle. these too are judged no longer relevant, if ever they were, in a society that supposedly consists of fluid, pluralistic interplay of diverse groups. The denial of class. Those who occupy higher circles of wealth and power are keenly aware of their own interests. While they sometimes differ among themselves on specific issues, they exhibit an impressive cohesion when it comes to protecting the existing class system of corporate power, property, privilege, and profit. At the same time, they are careful to discourage public awareness of the class power they wield. They avoid the C word, especially when used in reference to themselves, as in owning class, upper class, or moneyed class. And they like it least when the politically active elements of the owning class are called the ruling class. The ruling class in this country has labored long to leave the impression that it does not exist, does not own the lion's share of just about everything, and does not exercise a vastly disproportionate influence over the affairs of the country. Such precautions are themselves systematic of an acute awareness of class interests. That's wild, Dorian. YouTube hides your comments when you use the phrase ruling class. Yet, ruling class members are far from invisible. Their command positions in the corporate world, their control of international finance and industry, their ownership of major media, and their influence over state power and the political process are all matters of public record to some limited degree. While it would seem a simple matter to apply the C word to those who occupy the highest reaches of the C world, the dominant class ideology dismisses any such application as a lapse into conspiracy theory, quote unquote. The C word is also taboo when applied to the millions who do the work of society. For what are usually wages, the working class, a term that is dismissed as Marxist jargon, and it is verboten to refer to the exploiting and exploited classes. For then, one is talking about the very essence of the capitalist system, the accumulation of corporate wealth at the expense of labor. The C word is an acceptable term when prefaced with the soothing adjective middle. Every politician, publicist, and pundit will rhapsodize about the middle class, the object of their heartfelt concern. The much admired and much pitied middle class is supposedly inhabited by virtuously self sufficient people, free from the presumed profligacy, this damn word, of those who inhabit the lower rungs of society. By including almost everyone, middle class serves as a conveniently amorphous concept that masks the exploitation and inequality.
Put money into education, not prisons.
Of social relations. It is a class label that denies the actuality of class power. The C word is allowable when applied to one other group, the desperate lot who live on the lowest rungs of society, who get the least of everything while being regularly blamed for their own victimization, the underclass, quote unquote. References to the presumed deficiencies of the underclass people are acceptable because they reinforce the existing social hierarchy and justify the unjust treatment accorded society's most vulnerable elements. Barry, welcome in, comrade. Everybody follow Barry on Kick. Class reality is obscured by an ideology whose tenets might be summarized and rebutted as followed. Credo. There are no real class divisions in this society, save for some rich and poor. Almost all of us are middle class. Response. Wealth is enormously concentrated in the hands of relatively few in this country, while tens of millions work for poverty level wages. When work is to be had, the gap between rich and poor has always been great and has been growing since the late 1970s. Those in the middle also have been enduring increasing economic injustice and insecurity. Credo. Our social institutions and culture are autonomous entities in a pluralistic society, largely free from the influences of wealth and class power. To think otherwise is to entertain conspiracy theories. Response. Great concentrations of wealth exercise an influence in all aspects of life, often a dominating one. Our social and cultural institutions are run by boards of directors, or trustees and regents, drawn largely from interlocking, non-elective, self-selecting corporate elites. They had their faithful hirelings occupy most of the command positions of the executive state and other policy-making bodies, and manifest a keen awareness of their class interests when shaping domestic and international policies. This includes such policies as the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, designed to circumvent whatever democratic sovereignty exists within nations. Credo. The differences between rich and poor are a natural given, not causally linked. Individual human behavior, not class, determines human performance and life chances. Existing social arrangements are a natural reflection of largely innate human proclivities. Response. All conservative ideologies justify existing inequalities as the natural order of things, inevitable outcomes of human nature. If the very rich are naturally so much more capable than the rest of us, why must they be provided with so many artificial privileges under the law? So many bailouts, subsidies, and other special considerations at our expense. Their natural superior talents include unprincipled and illegal subterfuges such as price fixing, stock manipulation, insider trading, fraud, tax evasion, the legal enforcement of unfair competition, ecological spoliation, harmful products, and unsafe work conditions. One might expect naturally superior people not to act in such rapacious and venal ways. Differences in talent and capacity might exist between individuals. Do not excuse the crimes and injustices that are endemic to the corporate business system. No, so Redispi, I know what you're talking about there. I realized after I uploaded the last chapter that I misnamed one, and I skipped naming episode 2. So I had to actually rename them all. Yeah. So that did happen on my YouTube, I think, as well. Because when I went through the playlist, I realized they were all fucked up. Right here. So see now. Oh wait, see, I didn't fix this one yet. This one's still fucked up. Whoops. Well, I fixed it on Twitch, I think. Hold on. Now I need to see if I fixed it on Twitch or not. Okay, show me all the live readings. Yeah. Yeah. Wait. 8, 7. See, we're on chapter 9. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, now I know someone's watching them. That's good. I'm glad about that. The ABC theorists. Even among persons normally identified as progressive, one finds a reluctance to deal with the reality of capitalist class power. Sometimes the dismissal of the C word is quite categorical. At a meeting in New York in 1986, I heard the sociologist Stanley Aronowitz comment, quote, "When I hear the word class, I just yawn." For Aronowitz, class is a concept of diminishing importance, used by those he repeatedly referred to as quote unquote orthodox Marxists. Another left academic, Ronald Aronson, in a book entitled After Marxism, claims, in the face of all recent evidence, that classes in capitalist society have become less polarized, quote unquote, and class exploitation is not an urgent issue nowadays because labor unions, quote, have achieved power to protect their members and effect social policy, unquote. This at a time when many unions are being destroyed. Workers are being downgraded to the status of contract laborers, and the income gap is wider than in many decades. Many who pretend to be on the left are so rabidly anti Marxist as to seize upon any conceivable notion except class power to explain what is happening in the world. They are the anything but class, or ABC theorists, who, while not allied with conservatives on most political issues, do their part in stunting class consciousness. The left ABC theorists say we are giving too much attention to class. Who exactly is doing that? Surveying the mainstream academic publications, radical journalists, and socialist scholars' conferences, one is hard put to find much class analysis of any kind. Far from giving too much attention to class power, most US writers and commentators have yet to discover the subject. While pummeling a rather minuscule Marxist left, the ABC theorists would have us think they are doing courageous battle against hordes of Marxists who dominate intellectual discourse in this country. Yet another hallucination they hold in common with conservatives. In their endless search for conceptual schema that might mute Marxism's class analysis, left ABC theorists have twaddled for years over false dichotomization between early Marx, culturalistic, humanistic, good, and later Marx, dogmatic, economistic, bad. You actually literally see this today, by the way. As Marxist scholar Bertel Ullman notes, this artificial counterpoising transforms a relatively minor development in Marxist work into a chasm between two ways of thinking that have little in common. I just have to fix the YouTube still. Yeah, Redisby. Some ABC theorists labored hard to promote the writings of the late Italian Communist Party leader Antonio Gramsci as a source of cultural theory to counteract Marxist class analysis. See, for instance, publications like Piccone's Telos during 1970s and early 1980s. Gramsci, they said, rejected the economistic views of Marx and Lenin and did not treat class conflict as a central concept, preferring to develop a more nuanced analysis based on cultural hegemony. So, Gramsci was made into, quote, the Marxist who's safe to bring home to mother, unquote. As the historian T.J. Jackson put it, and as Christopher Phelps added, quote, Gramsci has become safe, tame, denatured, a wisp of his revolutionary self. Academics seeking to justify their retreat into highly abstruse theories have created fanciful illusions about their counter-hegemonic activities. They have created a mythical Gramsci who holds views he never did, including an opposition to revolutionary socialist organization of the sort that he, following upon Lenin, held indispensable. Monthly Review, 11/1995. Yeah, right? Penetration? Exactly. Gramsci himself would have considered the representations made about him by ABC theorists as oddly misplaced. He never treated culture and class as mutually exclusive terms, but saw cultural hegemony as a vital instrument of the ruling class. Furthermore, he occupied a predominant position of responsibility in the Italian Communist Party and considered himself firmly within the Marxist-Leninist camp. To the extent that class is accorded any attention in academic social science, pop sociology, and media commentary, it is as a kind of demographic trait or occupational status. So sociologists refer to upper middle, lower middle, and the like. Reduced to a demographic trait, one's class affiliation certainly can be seen to have relatively low political salience. Society itself becomes little more than a pluralistic configuration of status groups. Class is not a taboo subject if divorced from capitalism's exploitative accumulation process. Both mainstream social scientists and left ABC theorists fail to consider the dynamic interrelationship that gives class their significance. In contrast, Marxists treat class as a key concept in an entire social order known as capitalism, or feudalism, or slavery, centering around the ownership of the means of production, factories, mines, oil wells, agribusinesses, media conglomerates, and the like, and the need, if one lacks ownership, to sell one's labor on terms that are highly favorable to the employer. Class gets its significance from the process of surplus extraction. The relationship between worker and owner is essentially an exploitative one, involving the constant transfer of wealth from those who labor but do not own to those who own but do not labor. This is how some people get richer and richer without working, or with doing only a fraction of the work that enriches them, while others toil hard for an entire lifetime only to end up with little or nothing. Both orthodox social scientists and left ABC theorists treat the diverse social factions within the non-capitalist class as classes unto themselves. So they speak of a blue-collar class, a professional class, and the like. In doing so, they claim to be moving beyond a reductionist, quote-unquote, Marxist dualistic model of classes. But what is more reductionist than to ignore the underlying dynamics of economic power and the conflict between capital and labor? What is more misleading than to treat occupational groups as autonomous classes? Giving attention to every social group in capitalist society except the capitalist class itself. To every social conflict except class conflict. Both conventional and left ABC theorists have difficulty understanding that the creation of a managerial or technocratic social formation constitutes no basic change in the property relations of capitalism, no creation of new classes. Professionals and managers are not an autonomous class as such. Rather, they are mental workers who live much better than most other employees but who still serve the accumulation process on behalf of corporate owners. Did I hear? I did hear something like that. Okay, look. I've got this here. It's hard to see because my light broke. Look, wait. I've got my Italian dinner here. So we're gonna put on Little Chinese Everywhere while I have my Italian dinner. Yeah, with feta and spinach in it. Gonna have my Italian dinner while we watch Little Chinese Everywhere. And then we will continue our reading, okay? I might be. We'll see. My wife is off tonight, Barry, so we'll have to see. We'll see. No promises. No promises made. Mamma mia. I'm gonna eat this Italian dinner while we watch this. Crossing from China to Russia. This is the next episode after the last one of Little Chinese Everywhere. Let's go. A Gramsci sampler. Oh god, that hit me hard. That is a funny, funny joke. Okay, I'm gonna enjoy my Gramsci sampler, yeah, while I put on this here. Enjoy Little China.
And now I'm
enjoy this.
pretty much in a
Bellissimo. Thank you, Dave. As you can see, Dave's very worldly. Alright, here we go. Little Chinese Everywhere. Crossing from China to Russia.
And now I'm pretty much in a historical center. So this is an old Orthodox church, but now it's under renovation, so I can't go inside. In my last episode, I reached the tri-point where China meets North Korea and Russia. A few days later, my Russia e-visa was granted. I continued my travel along the border to Suifenhe and planned to cross into Russia from there. As I went north, I began to see more Russian elements. Suifenhe is full of stores that sell Russian chocolate, vodka, and there's even a Russian samovar at the hotel reception. Besides that, many people also speak Russian.
哎，师傅，那你会说俄语不？
会。
真的？
但是我们这嘎都基本上都能整两句。
哦。
因为啥？有俄罗斯人。
哦。
是生练出来。
啊，就等于是俄罗斯人多了呗。
对，你们工作多了，自然也会了。
啊。
再见。
啊，再见。
Okay, here is my hotel room. Wow, it's so spacious. I didn't expect this because I paid only like 85 yen for this hotel room. It looks very clean and comfortable. I've been in Dongbei for over 10 days now, and I've been to many border cities, but Suifenhe is the first one that there's a lot of trade going on. There are lots of shops that sell Chinese product to Russian tourists. All the signage is also written in Russian. I hear Russian, and also there are lots of shops that sells Russian produce, for example, chocolate, vodka, and also wine, etc., etc. So it's a different feeling compared with the border cities with North Korea, but here it's different. There is so much going on. Things here are even marked in Russian than in Mandarin. So look at this signage. The Russian is so big and the Chinese is so small. And look at this one. There is even no Chinese signage. It's all Russian. And here there is an advertisement looking for Russian speaking guide for our Russian tourists. So I think if you can speak Russian here, it's going to be very handy. You can definitely get a job very easily. 这个大的会比小的好吃吗？
大的是芒果味儿的，
芒果味的。
对，就降三高的。
哦，我可以称2个吗？
称几个
？2个，我就想尝一下。
称2个，2个咋称啊？来5块钱的吧。
我就想尝一下，可不可以？你不用拿袋儿了。
哎，这我发多少了？
嗯，
刚才扒拉掉了。
行。
15、20。
哇，真的有芒果味儿，酸酸的。
芒果味儿，对。
It's like a mixture of mango, pepper, and it's sour.
这不是灭亡以后才建这么一个吗？
就是清朝灭的时候才建的。
那时候不是民国时候吗？国民党的时候建立这么个东西啊。日本领事馆嘛。
日本的领事馆哈。
这个是地道，这个通着大白楼。
大白楼在哪儿啊？
在那铁路跟前儿。中东铁路吗？
什么叫大白楼呀？为什么这边会经常？
大白楼是俄式建筑。从建设往这边了，全归俄罗斯，原先俄罗斯人出来。
Soon I ran into another kind local who introduced me the origin of those European-styled houses.
咱们这个黄楼是老的，剩下这些楼都是新的。
但以前那个楼是干嘛的呀？
这是博物馆，民间博物馆，底下那个也是博物馆。那个上班时间不收费，随便看。
85 won, if she paid that for a hotel room, is like $12. Yeah. It's like those DP arcade prices we saw. Nothing on the drink menu was over like $1.
那个里面内饰是新的了，但是楼是老的。
就这几栋楼都是老的。
对，这个原来是那个俄罗斯的那个宾馆。
那栋楼以前是干嘛的？
这个日本领事馆嘛。对面那个是原来是俄罗斯的领事馆。
那等于说这个和那个都是日本的领事馆了，对吧？
对，但这个这个最早也是俄罗斯的，但是也让日本人占领过。后来日本占领过的时候不都用了吗？原来那个也算是绥芬河市市政府呢。还当过一段时间绥芬河市政府。
这样，谢谢你啊。So the locals are so warm-hearted, and now I'm pretty much in a historical center. So this is an old Orthodox church, but now it's under renovation, so I can't go inside.
Those buildings were left by the Russian Empire. In 1903, Russian Empire constructed the Eastern Railway Network, a T-shaped railway across northeast China to connect Vladivostok and Chita. And all cities along this railway began to develop rapidly. So in the early 19th century, Suifenhe was a busy trading center with businessmen from 18 different countries. But when Japan Empire took over in 1933, it stopped all the trade with the Soviet. But since 1945, the trade restarted, and Suifenhe became the most important international port city to Russian Far East.
Here I'm getting some more Soviet touch. A memorial and a train station built by the Russian Empire.
For dinner, I went to the most famous Russian restaurant called Maxim. I got a colorful plate of vegetables baked with cheese.
And guess what? There is no Chinese TV, there's only Russian TV. Although this part is just next to the construction site, there isn't so much dust. So in general, I found Suifenhe city pretty clean. And there is also lots of fresh products at a very affordable price. Even the marketplace, the open air marketplace is so clean. So there are also regulators who are helping them to regulate the space so that they can sell their product. Oh, I love this market.
The next day before leaving for Russia, I wanted to learn some quick Russian, so I asked the ladies at the reception.
你们前台是都会说俄语吗？
会的。
哎，能不能教我几句啊？
教你几句，你要想说啥呀？
最简单的你好怎么说呀？
你好 ，здравствуйте。здравствуйте。
здравствуйте。
对。
这么麻烦？这么麻烦？对啊。здравствуйте。那个谢谢咋说呀
？спасибо。
spasiba。
那你发音还挺标准的呢。
我是中国人呢。
给大样的。
给大样的。
给大
样的。哎，你们是在学校学的吗？还是说？
对，我们上学学了一些。
这边上学还能学俄语吗？
客人来自去哪儿？
那现在的就是他们什么中学啊什么的也都会说俄语吗？
对，都学的俄语。中学包括高中，我们这边都有俄语课。
是可以选的还是说？
可以选学的。
哦，是选学的，想学。
对，
就学俄语。
像我们那时候就是学俄语的多一些，但现在的孩子一般的都学英语。
啊，就以前学俄语的更多。
对，他们可以这个经贸嘛。
有点影响。啊，行，那你们忙啊。
行，好嘞。
This is actually the place where you can get the best rate. Remember, 青云市场 entrance, and then the first shop to the right that sells iPhone.
I also got some cash exchanged because Russia is under sanctions and Visa and MasterCard don't work there.
So it turned out that in Suifenhe with the e-visa I can't go through. So this morning I took a taxi to Dongning Koan, and here I can get a bus, which will take me to a place called Shiyue in Russia, and from there I have to transfer twice. Yeah, for your information, if you have an e-visa, go through Dongning, but not Suifenhe. 8点钟，请问是这个车吧？对，这个车。谢谢。好车。There aren't so many people in a bus today, but if it's summer vacation, then the bus will be full. I've just got my ticket to Shiyue, and it costs 200. Now I'm waiting with everyone else. I guess I just need to figure out how to get the rest of the journey done later.
I have been to Russia only once for only one night due to flight transfer. So this trip is practically my first real trip to Russia. I know very little about Russia, and I'm so excited to discover the biggest country in the world.
As soon as I crossed the border and entered Russia, I felt a totally different vibe. I don't even feel that I am in Asia anymore. It feels more like Eastern Europe. So I saw those tiny blue countryside houses, and the road got a bit bad, and probably because this part of Russia is also sparsely populated. So in the farmland there are lots of soybeans, whereas in China there are way more cornfields, and that's a major difference. And another thing is, since there are less people, this is a moment when I actually felt this vastness of the land.
We got off at a place far from the city center. All I knew is that I need to make it to Ussurisk first. I saw some Chinese faces. They don't look like tourists. And I asked if they're going to the same place.
请问你们到啥地方呀？乌苏里。
不到的。
能跟你们一起拼个车吗？啊。对，就我。
会说俄语？
不会。
待会儿呢，咱一块儿上到乌苏里车站吧。
好，谢谢。
Дешевецов.
цены?
Нет, 3 человека. Если один точка, да?
Да.
Уссури, один точка, 1500. Понял, да? Если потом ты другое.
去一个地方是1500卢布。
行。
你这俄语不会，你自己从哪去过来啊？
对。怕丢了。
我想到了海参崴就好了呗。
是呗。
反正自己出去逛也没啥。
没有朋友啊？
没有啊。
你看咱们都
没有朋友。
俺俩还会点俄语，这一句不会就干来了。
你们是哪儿的呀？
哦，东宁的。
东宁。那你们怎么都会俄语啊？
我们原来就在山东，我在这待了6年。
啊。
13年前来的。
啊。
我现在在韩国待了7年有。
那你也会说韩语了？
我会韩语、俄语、中文、显族话。
我天，这么牛逼！哎，那个显族话和那个韩语有啥不一样吗？
方言不一样
啊。
我们就是方言算是。
就像那个东北话跟
青岛话。
哎呀，太好了！
那你这翻译器你都整明白了？
对，用谷歌翻译嘛，到时候实在不行我就那个。
到时候你之前给我发个文件，不懂我给你用俄语翻译过来，直接告诉你。
行，好的，谢谢。
With their help, I easily got to the bus station, but at the ticket counter, it took me quite a while to get my ticket.
Сейчас подойдет. Подождем чуть-чуть.
Closest. 你需要我的护照吗？560。好的。
Тебе нужен мой паспорт. Окей.
Что? Камча.
Одну?
One.
Два? Один.
一个。
Это я.
So blind in Russia because I can't understand the language, and eventually with the help of Google Translate and after some struggle I got a bus ticket that leaves at 14:25, costs 560, and then I'm here for my lunch. Just got this bread, and luckily some of them even understand a little bit of Chinese. After another 2 hours bus ride, I changed into a taxi and finally made it to the hostel.
Okay?
Yes. Спасибо.
Пожалуйста.
Finally, I'm here. It has been a long time that I chose to stay in a hostel, and the main reason I stay here is because the hotel room in Vladivostok is insanely expensive. So I paid for this dorm room, a room of 4. I paid 150 yuan per night, and in China normally I can get quite a standard regular hotel room, but here that's what I can get. And a normal hotel room here would cost around 500 yuan, which is maybe like 80-70 US dollar. But what I like about it is that here it's so clean and so organized. So I'm not wearing my shoes inside the room, and everything is just so clean. I'll show you. This is the living room. We have an open kitchen. And some workspace. And a cinema. And we also have some bathroom and toilet, but everything is super clean. So I'm going to end my video here because I'm going to take a shower and have some coffee in the cafe downstairs.
Yeah, she's in Russia right here.
Hope you enjoy my
just crossed over.
episode, and stay tuned for the coming episodes about Vladivostok, the Far East Russia. So thanks for watching.
Next episode, we're in Vladivostok. All right, let's continue on with our read. And then I've got one last video after our read is done. All right, Mana, thanks for hanging out, comrade. So great to see you today. Have a good one. I just want to take my social security check. And and have a little babushka apartment. Yes. I support your desire for this. Very cool. I wonder if she will have the same energy to be skeptical of Russia as she did for DPRK. I'm hoping not, but we'll see, Frank. We'll see. We'll see. Alright, let's finish our read. Next part, Michael Parenti, Blackshirts and Reds, continuing on with the last chapter here. This part, anything, everyday class struggle. To support the view that class, in the Marxist sense, is passé, the ABC theorists repeatedly assert that there is not going to be a workers' revolution in the United States in the foreseeable future. I heard this sentiment expressed at 3 different panels during a Gramsci conference at Amherst, Massachusetts in April 1987. Even if we agree with this prophecy, we might still wonder how it becomes grounds for rejecting class analysis and for concluding that there is no such thing as exploitation of labor by capital, and no opposition from people who work for a living. The feminist revolution was going to transform our entire patriarchal society has thus far not materialized. Yet no progressive person takes this to mean that sexism is a chimera, or that gender-related struggles are of no great moment. That workers in the United States are not throwing up barricades does not mean that class struggle is a myth. In present-day society, such struggle permeates almost all workplace activities. Employers are relentlessly grinding away at workers, and workers are constantly fighting back against employers. Capital's class war is waged with court injunctions, anti-labor laws, police repression, union busting, contract violations, sweatshops, dishonest clocking of time, safety violations, harassment, and firing of resistant workers, cutbacks in wages and benefits, raids of pension funds, layoffs, and plant closings. Labor fights back with union organizing, strikes, slowdowns, boycotts, public demonstrations, job actions, coordinated absenteeism, and workplace sabotage. Okay, Barry. Class has a dynamic that goes beyond its immediate visibility. Whether we are aware of it or not, class realities permeate our society, determining much about our capacity to pursue our own interests. Class power is a factor in setting the political agenda, selecting leaders, reporting the news, funding science and education, distributing healthcare, mistreating the environment, depressing wages, resisting racial and gender inequality, marketing entertainment and the arts, propagating religious messages, suppressing dissidents, and defining social reality itself. The ABC theorists see the working class as not only incapable of revolution, but as on the way out, declining in significance as a social formation. Anyone who still thinks that class is of primary importance is labeled a die-hard Marxist, guilty of economism and reductionism, and unable to keep up with the post-Marxist, post-structuralist, post-industrialist, post-capitalist, post-modernist, and post-deconstructionist times. It is ironic that some left intellectuals should deem class struggle to be largely irrelevant, at the very time class power is becoming increasingly transparent. At the very time corporate concentration and profit accumulation is more rapacious than ever. and the tax system has become more regressive and oppressive. The upward transfer of wealth and income has accelerated. Public sector assets are being privatized. Corporate money exercises an increasing control over political process. People at home and abroad are working harder for less. And throughout the world, poverty is growing at a faster rate than the overall population. There are neoconservatives and mainstream centrists who maintain leftists who manifest a better awareness of class struggle than the left ABC theorists. Thus, former managing editor of New York Times A.M. Rosenthal sees the Republican Party's slash and burn offensive against social programs as not only a prescription for class struggle, but the beginning of its reality. Unquote. New York Times, 3/21/95. Rosenthal goes on to quote Wall Street financier Felix Rohatyn, who notes that, quote, the big beneficiaries of our economic expansion have been the owners of financial assets. Yeah, well, and a whole bunch, and well, liberal thinkers like Noam Chomsky and people like this as well. And yeah, well, and we know the people who came out like Francis Fukuyama and all of these other, all kinds of liberal thinkers right at the overthrow of the USSR, especially, who were like, yep, now we need to go beyond Marxism. Class is an outdated concept now. Yeah. Rosenthal goes on to quote Wall Street financier Felix Rohatyn, who notes that, quote, the big beneficiaries of our economic expansion have been the owners of financial assets, in what amounts to a huge transfer of wealth from lower skilled, middle class American workers to the owners of capital assets, and to the new technological aristocracy. Increasingly, working people see themselves as simply temporary assets to be hired or fired to protect the bottom line and create shareholder value. It says little for left ABC intellectuals when they can be outclassed by establishment people like Rosenthal and Rohatyn. Seizing upon anything but class, U.S. leftists today have developed an array of identity groups centering around ethnic, gender, cultural, and lifestyle issues. These groups treat the respected grievances as something apart from class struggle, and have almost nothing to say about the increasingly harsh politico-economic class injustices perpetrated against us all. Identity groups tend to emphasize their distinctiveness and their separateness from each other, thus fractionalizing the protest movement. To be sure, they have important contributions to make around issues that are particularly salient to them, issues often overlooked by others. But they also should not downplay their common interests, nor overlook the common class enemy they face. The forces that impose class injustice and economic exploitation are the same ones that propagate racism, sexism, militarism, ecological devastation, homophobia, xenophobia, and the like. People may not develop a class consciousness, but they still are affected by the power, privileges, and handicaps related to the distribution of wealth and want. These realities are not canceled out by race, gender, or culture. The latter factors operate within an overall class society. The exigencies of class power and exploitation shape the social reality we all live in. Racism and sexism help to create super exploited categories of workers, minorities, and women, and reinforce the notions of inequality that are so functional for the capitalist system. To embrace a class analysis is not to deny significance of identity issues, but to see how these are linked both to each other and to the overall structure of politico-economic power. An awareness of class relations deepens our understanding of culture, race, gender, and other such things. Damn, I think I read something about class feminism in Empire somewhere. Yeah, I feel like I did too, Lainey. Some remarkable Marxist feminist thinker. Wealth and power. In order that a select few might live in great opulence, millions of people work hard for an entire lifetime, never free from financial insecurity, and at great cost to the quality of their lives. The complaint is not that the very rich have so much more than everyone else, but that their superabundance and endless accumulation comes at the expense of everyone and everything else, including our communities and our environment. Great concentrations of wealth give the owning class control not only over the livelihoods of millions, but over civic life itself. Money is the necessary ingredient that gives the rich their immense political influence, their monopoly ownership of mass media, their access to skilled lobbyists and high public office. To those who possess it, access to great wealth also brings social prestige and cultural dominance, including membership on the governing boards of foundations, universities, museums, research institutions, and professional schools. Likewise, the absence of money is what makes the have-nots and have-littles relatively powerless, depriving them of access to national media and severely limiting their influence over political decision-making. As the gap between the corporate rich and the rest of us grows, the opportunities for popular rule diminish. That's a statement that's very important today, isn't it? There is much discourse on, quote, how to balance freedom with security. History offers numerous examples of leaders who, in the name of national security, have been ready to extinguish what precious few liberties people might have won after generations of struggle. Challenges to the privileged social order are treated as attacks upon all social order, a plunge into chaos and anarchy. Repressive measures are declared necessary to safeguard people from the dangers of terrorists, subversives, Reds, and other supposed enemies, both foreign and domestic. Again and again, we are asked to choose between freedom and security, when in truth, there is no security without freedom. In both dictatorships and democracies, the agencies of national security, acting secretively and unaccountably, have regularly violated both our freedom and our security, practicing every known form of repression, corruption, and deceit. Once in control of the state, plutocratic interests can use a regressive taxation system to make the public pay for the agencies of repression that are essential to elite domination. Still, democratic governance can prove troublesome, inciting all sorts of popular demand, and imposing restraints on big business's enjoyment of a freewheeling market. For this reason, the captains of capitalism and their conservative publicists support both a strong state armed with every intrusive power and a weak government, unable to stop corporate abuse or serve the needs of an ordinary populace. Aside from the systematic imperatives that cause capitalism to accumulate without end, we must also reckon with the driving force of class greed. Wealth is an addiction. There is no end to the amount of money one might desire to accumulate. The best security to being rich is to get still richer. Piling possession upon possession, giving oneself over to the aura sacra fames, the cursed greed for gold, the desire for more money, then can be consumed in 1,000 lifetimes of limitless indulgence, wanting in nothing but still more and more money. Wealth buys every comfort and privilege in life. The fame of fortune, elevating the possessor to the highest social stratosphere, an expression of the aggrandizing self, an expansion of the ego's boundary, an extension of one's existence beyond the grave, leaving one feeling almost invulnerable to time and morality. Wealth is pursued without moral restraint. The very rich try to crush anyone who resists their endless, heartless, unprincipled accumulation. Like any addiction, money is pursued in that obsessive, immoral, single-minded way, revealing a total disregard for what is right or wrong, just or unjust, in indifference to other considerations and other people's interests, and even one's own interests, should they go beyond feeding the addiction. Capitalism is a rational system, the well-calculated systematic maximization of power and profits, a process of accumulation anchored in material obsession that has the ultimately irrational consequence of devouring the system itself, and everything else with it. Eco-apocalypse, a class act. In 1876, Marx's collaborator, Friedrich Engels, offered a prophetic caveat, quote, "Let us not flatter ourselves overmuch on account of our human conquest over nature, for each such conquest takes its revenge on us. At every step we are reminded that we by no means rule over nature, like a conqueror over a foreign people, like someone standing outside of nature, but that we, with flesh, blood, and brain, belong to nature and exist in its midst." Unquote. With its never-ending emphasis on exploitation and expansion, and its indifference to environmental costs, capitalism appears determined to stand outside nature. The essence of capitalism, its raison d'etre, is to convert nature into commodities, and commodities into capital, transforming the living earth into inanimate wealth. This capital accumulation process wreaks havoc upon the global ecological system. It treats the planet's life-sustaining resources, arable land, groundwater, wetlands, forests, fisheries, ocean beds, rivers, air quality, as dispensable ingredients of limitless supply, to be consumed or toxified at will. Consequently, the support system of the entire ecosphere, the planet's thin skin of fresh water, air, and topsoil, are at risk, threatened by such things as global warming, massive erosion, and ozone depletion. Global warming is caused by tropical deforestation, motor vehicle exhaust, and other fossil fuel emissions that create a greenhouse effect, trapping heat close to the Earth's surface. This massed heat is altering the atmospheric chemistry and climatic patterns across the planet, causing record drought, floods, tidal waves, snowstorms, hurricanes, heat waves, and great losses in soil moisture. We now know that the planet does not have limitless ability to absorb heat caused by energy consumption. Another potential catastrophe, is the shrinkage of the ozone layer that shields us from the sun's deadliest rays. Over 2.5 billion pounds of ozone-depleting chemicals are emitted into the Earth's atmosphere every year, resulting in excessive ultraviolet radiation that is causing an alarming rise in skin cancer and other diseases. Increased radiation is damaging trees, crops, and coral reefs, and destroying the ocean's phytoplankton, source of about half the planet's oxygen. If the oceans die, so do we. At the same time, the rise in pollution and population has given us acid rain, soil erosion, silting of waterways, shrinking grasslands, disappearing water supplies and wetlands, and the obliteration of thousands of species, with hundreds more on the endangered list. In 1970, on what was called Environment Day, quote unquote, President Richard Nixon intoned, "What a strange creature is man that he fouls his own nest," unquote. With that utterance, Nixon was helping to propagate the myth that the ecological crisis we face is a matter of irrational individual behavior, rather than being of a social magnitude. In truth, the problem is not individual choice, but the system that imposes itself on individuals and prefigures their choice. Behind the ecological crisis is the reality of class interest and power. An ever-expanding capitalism and a fragile, finite ecology are on a calamitous collision course. It is not true that the ruling politico-economic interests are in a state of denial about this. Far worse than denial, they are in a state of utter antagonism towards those who think the planet is more important than corporate profits. So they defame environmentalists as eco-terrorists, EPA Gestapo, Earth Day alarmists, tree huggers, and purveyors of green hysteria and liberal claptrap. Some environmental activists in this country have been the object of terrorist assaults conducted by unknown assailants with the implicit intolerance of law enforcement authorities. Autocrats in countries like Nigeria, in bed with polluting oil companies, have waged brutal war upon environmentalists, going so far as to hang popular leader Ken Saro-Wiwa. In recent years, conservatives within and without Congress, fueled by corporate lobbyists, have supported measures that would 1. Prevent the Environmental Protection Agency from keeping toxic fill out of lakes and harbors, 2. Eliminate most of the wetland acreage that was to be set aside for a reserve, 3. Completely deregulate the production of chlorofluorocarbons that deplete the ozone layer, 4. Virtually eliminate clean water and clean air standards, 5. Open the unspoiled Arctic Wildlife Refuge in Alaska to oil and gas drilling, 6. Defund efforts to keep raw sewage out of rivers and away from beaches, 7. Privatize and open national parks to commercial development, 8. Give a few remaining ancient forests over to unrestrained logging, and 9. Repeal the Endangered Species Act. In sum, their openly professed intent has been to eviscerate all our environmental protections, however inadequate these are. Again, nothing new under Trump, as you can hear. When was this written again? 90s? Conservatives maintain that there is no environmental crisis. Technological advances will continue to make life better for more and more people. One might wonder why rich and powerful interests take this seemingly suicidal anti-environmental route. They can destroy welfare, public housing, public education, public transportation, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid with impunity. For they and their children will not thereby be deprived, having more than sufficient means to procure private services for themselves. But the environment is a different story. Wealthy conservatives and their corporate lobbyists inhabit the same polluted planet as everyone else, eat the same chemicalized food, and breathe the same toxified air. In fact, they do not live exactly as everyone else. They experience a different class reality, residing in places where the air is somewhat better than in low and middle income areas. They have access to food that is organically raised and specially prepared. The nation's toxic dumps and freeways usually are not situated in or near their swanky neighborhoods. That got me teared up. The pesticide sprays are not poured over their trees and gardens. Clear cutting does not desolate their ranches, estates, and vacation spots. Even when they or their children succumb to a dread disease like cancer, they do not link the tragedy to environmental factors. Though scientists now believe that most cancers stem from human-made causes. They deny there is a larger problem because they themselves create that problem and owe much of their wealth to it. But how can they deny the threat of an ecological apocalypse brought on by ozone depletion, global warming, disappearing topsoil, and dying oceans? Do the dominant elites want to see life on Earth, including their own, destroyed? In the long run, they indeed will be victims of their own policies, along with everyone else. However, like us all, they live not in the long run, but in the here and now. For the ruling interests, what is at stake is something more immediate and greater concern than global ecology. It is global capital accumulation. The fate of the biosphere is an abstraction compared to the fate of one's own investment. Furthermore, pollution pays, while ecology costs. Every dollar a company must spend on environmental productions is one less dollar in earnings. It is more profitable to treat the environment like a septic tank, pouring thousands of new harmful chemicals into the atmosphere each year, dumping raw industrial effluent into the river or bay, turning waterways into open sewers. The long-term benefit of preserving a river that runs alongside a community where the corporate polluters do not live anyway does not weigh as heavily as the immediate gain that comes from ecologically costly modes of production. Solar, wind, and tidal energy systems could help avert ecological disaster, but they would bring disaster to the rich oil cartels. 6 of the world's 10 top industrial corporations are involved primarily in the production of oil, gasoline, and motor vehicles. Fossil fuel pollution means billions in profits. Ecologically sustainable forms of production threaten those profits. Immense and imminent gain for oneself is far more compelling a consideration than a diffuse loss shared by the general public. The cost of turning a forest into a wasteland weighs little against the profits that come from harvesting the timber. This conflict between immediate private gain on the one hand and remote public benefit on the other operates even at the individual consumer level. Thus, it is in one's long-term interest not to operate a motor vehicle, which contributes more to environmental devastation than any other single consumer item. But we have an immediate need for transportation in order to get to work or do whatever else needs doing. So, most of us have no choice except to own and use automobiles. The car culture demonstrates how the ecological crisis is not primarily an individual choice, a matter of a man soiling his own nest. In most instances, the choice of using a car is no choice at all. Ecologically efficient and less costly electric car means transportation has been deliberately destroyed since the 1930s, in campaigns waged across the country by the automotive, oil, and tire industries. Corporations involved in transportation put America on wheels in order to maximize consumption costs for the public and profits for themselves. And to hell with the environment or anything else. The enormous interests of giant multinational corporations outweigh doomsayer predictions about ecological crisis. Sober business heads refuse to get caught up in the hysteria about the environment, preferring to quietly augment their fortunes. Besides, there can be found new experts who will go against all the evidence and say that the jury is still out, that there is no conclusive proof to support the alarmists. Conclusive proof, in this case, would come only when we reach the point of no return. And even then. Ecology is profoundly subversive of capitalism. It needs planned, environmentally sustainable production rather than the rapacious and unregulated kind. It requires economical consumption rather than artificially stimulated, ever-expanding consumerism. It calls for natural, low-cost energy systems rather than profitable, high-cost polluting ones. Ecology's implications for capitalism are too horrendous for the capitalists to contemplate. Those in the higher circles, who once hired Blackshirts to destroy democracy out of fear that their class interests were threatened, have no trouble doing the same against eco-terrorists. Those who have waged merciless war against the Reds have no trouble making war against the Greens. Those who have brought us poverty wages, exploitation, unemployment, homelessness, urban decay, and other oppressive economic conditions are not too troubled about bringing us ecological crisis. The plutocrats are more wedded to their wealth than to the earth upon which they live, more concerned with the fate of their fortunes than with the fate of the planet. Hey Human, great to see you. The struggle over environmentalism is part of the class struggle itself, a fact that seems to have escaped many environmentalists. The impending eco-apocalypse is a class act. It has been created by and for the benefit of the few, at the expense of the many. The trouble is, this time, the class act may take all of us down, once and forever. In the relationship between wealth and power, what is at stake is not only economic justice, but democracy itself and the survival of the biosphere. Unfortunately, struggle for democracy and ecological sanity is not likely to be advanced by trendy, jargonized ABC theorists who treat class as an outmoded concept, and who seem ready to consider anything but the realities of class capitalist power. In this, they are little different from the dominant ideology they profess to oppose. They are the ones who need to get back on this planet. The only countervailing force that might eventually turn things in a better direction is an informed and mobilized citizenry. Whatever shortcomings, the people are our best hope. Indeed, we are they. Whether or not the ruling circles still wear black shirts, and whether or not their opponents are Reds, La luta continua. The struggle continues. Today, tomorrow, and through all history.
Long live the People's Revolution!
That's it. Black shirts and reds, complete.